Hey guys, welcome to Spiritual Defense. This video series was designed and created to be able to defend, disarm, and defeat the spiritual forces of negativity, of fear and anxiety, and of despair and hopelessness that are going on right now. I want to give a special shout out to Kogen and to Rob and Bowie and Matt for making all this possible, for sharing these videos and giving you guys some encouragement, some help, and some hope. You know, when we talk about the three core values of spiritual defense, we talk about defending the truth and not believing the lies that sometimes come into our heads and sometimes come into our hearts. We talk about disarming the powers that bring that fear and anxiety, the powers that bring that hopelessness and despair. And finally, defeat. We recognize that we can defeat those powers, and when we do, that we can in turn be encouragement, help, and hope to others. Today, the spiritual defense that we're going to be talking about is faith. You know, when I think about our training in combat sports, trust is something that we understand implicitly. Trust is something that we understand is absolutely essential. Because when we talk about trust, in order for us to be able to train properly, and in order for us to be able to train safely, we have to be able to trust our training partners. You know, I want you to think about that person that you train with all the time, and then ask yourself this question: do I trust them? You know, that trust is far-reaching, isn't it? We trust our partner to stop when we tap. We trust our partner to go easy when we're trying to learn that new sequence or striking series, and they're not going to take our head off. That whole idea of trust comes into play all the time. It actually explains why when that new person comes in, we don't roll the same way. We don't spar the same way with them because we're unsure of what they're going to do. We haven't established that bond of trust yet. You know, trust is not something that just comes overnight. It's something that's built over time. Trust is built on reputation, on behavior, and consistency. Now, this same thing is true in our spiritual life. You know, when you think about the essentials that we need for our physical life, food, clothing, shelter, all of those are essential to life. Our spiritual life is no different, and faith is actually essential to our spiritual life. Having that belief, having that trust. If we don't have that, our spiritual life can't really even get off the ground and get moving. You know, when I think about faith in the spiritual realm, it reminds me of a book of the Bible called Hebrews. And in the 11th chapter, the 6th verse, it says this: "And without faith, it is impossible to please God. But anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him." You know, that passage speaks a lot to me because I think sometimes when we kind of deal with this whole aspect of God and what he's doing and who he is, we tend to say things like, God, if you're real, if you really exist, then do this or do that. And that's the exact opposite of what God is calling us to. God is calling us to faith and trust in him. It says that without that faith, we can't please him. And he doesn't ask us to exercise blind faith. He doesn't simply say, do this because I said so. Instead, he's given us the Bible. The Bible is an entire history book of the promises that God has fulfilled. Not only that, but he sent Jesus to come to this earth to tell us who God is, and that he was God, and that he lived and died and rose again. Now, having said all of that, we understand that the faith and the trust that we're required to have is not something that we're always going to be able to see and touch, but he gives us faith in our hearts, in our minds, in our souls, so that we can indeed trust him, so that we can indeed know and understand that his promises can be fulfilled, not only in the life of the church, not only in the life of those throughout history, but in our lives as well. And so this week, as we talk about spiritual defense, our first line of defense is our faith. Our faith that God's promises are true and real, that we can count on them, just like we count on our training partners. I hope that this has encouraged you. I hope that you have grabbed something and gained something out of it. And I hope that as you start this week, that you will begin by taking a moment and placing your faith and your trust in God and His promises, and you will begin to gain a greater level of spiritual defense. I miss you guys, and I can't wait to see you soon.